Well-dressed young Iranian gentleman came up to me and said, "What are you doing here?" Suddenly, magically, Khomeini appeared. The 2 or 3 most powerful men in Iran I'd seen within a space of 24 hours. So I went back to see him on this next visit to Tehran. He wasn't there, his secretary was there. And I said, "Madam, is Miss in?" And she went, "Shh." And he said, "You know what's happened?" He said, "You have been in contact with the Iranian Secret Service, what we call the Ettela'at. They were testing you." Not many people can claim to have had a face-to-face interaction with Ayatollah Khomeini, the supreme leader of the Islamic Revolution in Iran. But it happened to me. I was in Tehran in the lobby of my hotel reporting for my newspaper, and a well-dressed young Iranian gentleman came up to me and said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm a journalist." I said, "In Farsi, you use the word khabarnigar. I'm a khabarnigar." And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to meet Ayatollah Khomeini." I was joking. And he said, "Okay, be here tomorrow morning and I'll take you to see him." I didn't know who he was, but I was curious. All journalists are curious, and you never know that you might actually hit the gold mine. So in the morning, I was ready. I thought, well, he might be a liar. It might be true. Who knows? But he drove up, and to my astonishment, he drove up in a Cadillac, got me into the car, and we drove. I was sitting in the front seat. We weaved through all the security cordons, up the hillside, up north to where the Khomeini family lived. And we stopped outside this house, very ordinary looking house. We went in a big, big room. And my friend, my contact said to me, "Before the Ayatollah appears, you must pray." And I said, "I'm not a Muslim. How do I pray?" He said, "Be quiet. Just do what we do." And there were 4 or 5 of us by then standing in a line. And we moved our heads to the left, we moved our heads to the right. And we did the perfunctory prayers. And then suddenly, magically, Khomeini appeared on a little platform from the back of the room. He was an old man by then. You could see there's a white beard. He was doddery and shaking. And he was holding on to his son, Ahmed. Ahmed, who was the second most powerful man in the country at that time. Ahmed was there, and he's been supporting his father. And the Khomeini gave us his blessings. And after a few minutes, we left. And we drove all the way back to the hotel. That evening, the German ambassador to Iran said to me, "My God, I've been here for 3 years. I've never seen Khomeini. How did you achieve that?" And I had no answer to give him. But I can tell you, when we got back to the hotel, this Iranian contact said to me, "Who else do you want to meet?" And again, half jokingly, I said, How about Hashemi Rafsanjani? He's probably the second or third most powerful man after Khomeini. He's the Speaker of Parliament." He said, "Okay, no problem. Be here tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I'll take you." And lo and behold, the next morning, up in his Cadillac, I got into the Cadillac and we drove, weaving through the streets of Tehran. There were some bombs dropping in the distance because it was the middle of the Iran-Iraq war, but he didn't seem concerned. And I thought, well, he's not concerned. Why should I be concerned? Anyway, we got to Parliament, the Iranian Parliament, and I was taken straight into Rafsanjani's office with my contact standing there with me. And I spent 90 minutes, a Q&A with Rafsanjani, standing, sitting no further than you're sitting, maybe 3 or 4 feet away. And he answered all my questions extremely well. There was an interpreter, not the man who taken me, but there was someone else giving me the answers in English to all my questions. I was completely flabbergasted. The 2 or 3 most powerful men in Iran I'd seen within a space of 24 hours. We got back to the hotel and I said to my contact, I said, "Who are you? How have you been able to facilitate these meetings?" He says, "I'll tell you all the answers. Come to my office tomorrow." And he gave me his card. I took the card. And the next day I went to his office and he sat me down. He said, "You're going to have lunch with me." And we had kebabs and rice. And he said, "I am now the head," he said, "I'm the head of the Pekan car manufacturing company." Tehran is an Iranian car made under license from France. And he said, we're starting a new office in Algiers, and I want you to be the head of the office. And he said, we can give you a very good salary, $10,000 a month, plus a driver, plus your living costs. At that time, I think I was earning about the equivalent of $2,000 a month. So it was a huge, huge amount of money. And I said, yes, it sounds very exciting, very exciting. I'll let you know. But as it so happened, I was called back to London. I told my wife what had happened. She said, you're crazy. You don't know this man. He's offering you this huge sum of money. You're a journalist. What are you going to do with car manufacturing or car exporting? Go back and tell him, no, thank you. And I thought about it. I thought, actually, my wife is right. A stranger offers me this wonderful job. I don't know who he is. I don't know what his credentials are. So I went back to see him on this next visit to Tehran. And I went to his office. I had the address. And I knocked on the door. He wasn't there. His secretary was there. And I said, Madam, is Mr. in? And she went, shh, just like that, and ushered me out of the building. I came back to my hotel. I rang an Iranian friend of mine, a very well-connected academic, and I said, look, I don't understand what's happened. I told him the whole story. I told him the story of meeting Khomeini, the story of meeting Rafsanjani, the story of being offered this fantastic job. And he said, you know what's happened? He said, you have been in contact with the Iranian Secret Service, what we call the Ettela'at. They were testing you. They want to see if they could use you. Good luck, but don't do it. And I didn't. In hindsight, I asked myself, why was the Iranian Secret Service interested in me? We know that secret services are always interested in journalists, but why me at that particular time? Iran was in desperate need of friends. They wanted people who they thought they could trust, who would be objective about Iran. And they wanted someone who had access both to Iran and to the West. So I think for some reason, they had looked around and they thought, well, this man seems quite reasonable. He seems balanced. Let's see if we can get him to help us. I think that the motivation was. But no one ever told me, so I can only guess in retrospect. This was, the very first time I'd been approached by an intelligence agency to work for them. But I have to say, it wasn't the only time. And during this series, I'll tell you about some more examples of how I was approached by various intelligence agencies who wanted me to work for them. Sometimes the most unexpected people become your friends, and it happened to me in Iran, in Tehran in 1993, when a group of young men, 3 men, actually members of the Iranian Secret Service, attached themselves in with me. And we ate together, we traveled together, we became friends. They laughed at my silly jokes. Only much later did I realize they were monitoring me and they wanted something from me in return. I've been telling you about my encounters with the world's intelligence services. So please tune in next week and every week thereafter if you want to hear more about what I've called the Spy Chronicles.